Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Educator Yarns. This is Jess and I'm here with Belinda.
Hi, everyone.
This is season 4, episode 4. And yeah, we're happy to be getting started. We've got some cool wrap actions to be yarning with you all about today. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which you are listening on today. Both Belinda and I are on beautiful Dark and Young country on the New South Wales Central Coast. I want to pay our respects to elders both past and present and acknowledge any Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander listeners that are tuning in. So, keeping with the theme of season 4, we're answering questions from educators that have emailed in, although we haven't got any for this particular episode. And we're also looking at reconciliation action plan actions. And we've got 3 here that we've outlined that we want to yarn about today. So the first one being opportunities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children to celebrate their identities. The second being reconciliation projects, and the last reconciliation networks. So these are actually optional actions through the Narragansett platform. They're not mandatory. And in your experience, Belinda, do you find that educators do a lot of the optional, or they just stick with those 14 mandatory actions?
Definitely the mandatory actions, because I think unless you've had some kind of PD or training around how to navigate the platform, sometimes people seem to get quite overwhelmed with knowing where to start. So definitely, well, I actually do recommend that people start with the mandatory ones myself. Your kind of thoughts are a little different, Jess, around those ones that are a bit more tailored to the early years?
Look, I think I do as well. I recommend they start with the mandatory ones because that lays the foundation. And what it also does when they start putting those things in place is that it affirms that they're already doing some things. You know, most centres are already got an acknowledgement of country happening. Most centres already acknowledge and celebrate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander significant dates. So it's not like you're starting from, from nothing. There are things that are already in place, and all it does is suggest that you review and reflect and maybe tweak a little bit or go a little bit deeper. Or it gives you a few more suggestions on how that could, be approached with children in a different way. But it's not, then the mandatory actions are not particularly challenging. I don't believe that. That's my feeling. There are ones that take potentially longer than others, like building connections with community, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the classroom, and cultural responsiveness for educators, because you're required to put in a professional development plan for your team, for yourself, and build connections with community. Those things take longer. But the others, once you sort of got them in place, it's just a simple, few things you have to do, like having a welcome to country. You're not doing a welcome to country every week, at your service, but potentially there's one time throughout the year, whether it's a welcome picnic or the end of year party or an anniversary or something like that, where you have a community gathering and you'll have an annual welcome to country as part of that formal gathering each year annually. So once you've set it up and you found who the right person is in your community to be doing that, and you've developed a relationship and you've had them come out and visit once and that's gone really well, then it's just like, this sounds really terrible, and I don't mean it to sound so trivial, but it's a little bit like rinse and repeat, because you're redoing those things again and again each year. It just becomes part of your daily practice. It's not challenging for you, right?
And I think, like, saying on to that too, Jess, I think it is important, I certainly recommend that services continue to have their working party and review and refresh their app every year and continue that process happening ongoing. And I suppose that's when I would recommend that services add some of those extra options. Like you're saying, once those foundations are laid, then they can be sort of challenging themselves further about where to from there. And that's when some of those optional extras, I think, would fit in.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key point. So the reflection survey, people tend to do it when they start their app, and then occasionally they'll get an email if they've not been logging in regularly and so forth and doing these things themselves. They'll get an email from Narragansett that says your wrap has been reverted back to draft. And this is a prompt for you to go back and retake the reflection survey, because hopefully some of the things that were identified that you weren't particularly doing well, those things have probably progressed now and you're ready
Yeah.
to consider something else and delve a little bit deeper. So it's important that you do that because it also helps you to celebrate your RAP progress, which is another action. It's another mandatory action. So you need to constantly, stop and, take stock of, what you've achieved and where you've come from and what you're doing now, and then, make new goals and new plans moving forward. So that reflection survey is a really good tool.
It's really good visible data that you can see those changes, So
Yeah.
definitely recommending to review and redo that every year at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the RAP actions that we're talking about today, they are the optional ones. So when you're in the Narragansett platform, you can click on show only required RAP actions, and these are the mandatory ones that you must do in order to have a published reconciliation action plan, or you can click on show all RAP actions. And the reason why some of these optional ones are not mandatory is because the Narragansett platform is there to suit lots of different service types. So family daycare, out of school hours care, early childhood, primary school and secondary school. So obviously there's an optional RAP action for the early years learning framework, and there's an optional RAP action for My Time Our Place. But if you're not a NUSH educator, you're probably not going to do that action, so that's why they're optional. But yeah, there's some really great suggestions of what else you could be doing. And there's, as we all know, each of these actions has ideas and professional learning resources. And did you think about sections? And I think even just looking at that to get more ideas and more information and to challenge and build your own cultural capacity, it's worth having a look at them regardless.
Absolutely.
So the first cab off the rank is to talk about opportunities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children to celebrate their identities. So at your school, Belinda, what are some ways that you are supporting children or that you're celebrating our kids' identities at your school? What do you do?
So we've actually got a really exciting project that's happening at the moment. I was successful in applying for a big grant with a project called Together for Humanity. And so specifically it was around being able to, exactly that, like help the children at our school to, I guess embrace and also celebrate their identity. We have 26 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students at our school. At the moment, we're working on this really cool project actually with my cousin, and he's a really amazing musician, and we're actually recording a hip-hop track. So it was really cool. The process that we did it was around just making like random sounds with different objects, paintbrushes, clapping sticks. We had some of the boys playing didge. And then we've started writing lyrics around identity, about just about what it's like being at school, all that sort of thing. But we also have a club called Culture Club, and with that we perform at well, I don't really perform, I just guide it, sort of thing. But at all the assemblies and things like that. So we've got Harmony Day coming up in 2 weeks, and so our kids are going to be performing. Our boys have got the didge, the girls do dance and clap sticks. So and they love it, like every single time we have an event, they're like, Miss Huntriss, are we doing Culture Club for the assembly? I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm probably behind this one, But one thing that I really that we started doing last year, and I really want to do a bit more of, is bringing that, because they're really into it, they really want to be able to, and some of our kids are a bit shy, and some of them don't want to stand up in front of the assembly, and that's fine. It's not mandatory. It's whoever wants to do it. Some of them want to play didge, in Didge Club, but they don't want to play it in front of the school, and that's fine. It's about knowing your students. But another thing that we did last year was we had an excursion to the local, so I made a connection with the local preschool down the road. And so our students went out and talked to them about culture and did a performance and things. So we're going to do that again this year. And I think it was just for that, it was such an amazing experience to actually see the students like passing on their cultural knowledge. And it was just such great leadership and mentoring for the little preschool age children. So, we're doing lots of kind of things like that. I think even in terms of, celebrating identity, for me, it's about also bringing in as many people as I can from the community so that they can see. We have another cultural program. We've got lots of cultural programs, Jess, but we run a fortnightly cultural program called Culture Yarns. So that's just like our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids in year 3 to 6, and then we run a separate one from K to 2. And so we made a relationship with Wallatuka, the Wallatuka Institute at Newcastle University. I used to actually work there and go there as a student. And so we actually had a lot of early childhood and teaching students come out to the school just to share their story. And so also I think exposing, the children to like different Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, that they can see that they themselves are represented, some of us have, might have blonde hair, blue eyes, or fair skin or dark skin, or be from urban or remote or whatever that might be. So for that, I think it's about coming to, like, I love the idea of all coming together. They were all from different shapes, sizes, and colors, and we can celebrate that, that greatness. And I think, for me, I think it's that greatness as well, is that like really building up with our kids, that like we this is something that we should be so proud of. Like, there's not everyone, like there's only a small number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia. And so it's, like it's something to be so proud of, like the oldest continuing culture. So for me, it's about the language that I use as well, like positive role models, and, and just making out how deadly it is to be a blackfellow. Like, I think that's really, like, that language is super important as well.
Yeah. That's so fantastic. You're doing so much at your school. And I guess just to play devil's advocate, because I know that this question I've been asked it before. What happens with Culture Club when you have non-Indigenous children that ask, can I come because I want to learn how to play the didgeridoo too? What do you do?
Interesting. So that has happened. Absolutely. It depends, because we have opened it up to a degree to for all students to come. So I have a list of every student in the school. My goal is to have every student in the school attend Culture Yarns at least once. But there are certain times that the information or what we're discussing is just relevant to our cultural identity. And if you are not an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person, then I guess that's not going to be applicable. If we're talking about Indigenous identity, then they're not, that they have a different take on that. So there's certainly times where it is just for Indigenous students, and then there's other opportunities when we do have guest speakers, or if we're doing different things, that we do open that up. We also have a really amazing Dig teacher from our community, and I simply went to him and asked about that, because every boy in our school basically wants to play Dig. I guess there's also like some factors to think about, like in terms of like, hygiene and stuff, and also they're very expensive. So, I can't fund that, and our school can't fund that for every single boy that wants to play. What we did decide to do based upon that is that a lot of kids were going home and asking, like boys at the school were going home and asking their families if they could buy a Dig. Because I said, look, if you guys are committed, I need to see that commitment before I can, like it's quite expensive. And our funding doesn't, necessarily provide for that either. So a lot of the kids now have bought their own Digers and asked for Christmas and stuff. So we've also opened up, we have a weekly lunch club as well, Culture Club at lunchtime. So everyone can come to that and share culture. And I took the advice of our Dig teacher, who, from his point of view, his exact words were along the lines of, these kids play footy with these boys. They go through school with them. That's their mates. If they want to learn Dig and respect our culture, then they can.
Yeah,
so
nice.
Yeah, I think it's totally dependent on your context, on your community, on sort of what people think in that way. But I think if we really want to promote reconciliation, there does have to be opportunities for everyone to learn. And like, to be honest, Jess, I feel that, like, in my experience in a school, I've been in multiple schools, but it's Aboriginal studies or Aboriginal perspectives is one of the students' favourite subjects, and it's because well, it's not a subject; it's intertwined into whatever that Hizzy or Hass or science, whatever they're learning. But because it's engaging for everyone. It's hands-on learning. It's kinesthetic learning. It's learning about country, which they all live on.
Yeah.
So I think it's for everybody.
Do you use the 8 ways of learning when you're like programming and planning that out?
Personally, I don't use it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, potentially why that is. I know that there are certain protocols around the use of it that I perhaps just haven't personally followed up on.
Yeah.
But I guess in my experience, see that there's particular like learning styles that our kids generally prefer to learn in. So I'm kind of more considerate of those kind of
Well,
learning styles.
what you've just said is that they are the 8 ways of learning. Do you know what I mean? So
Okay.
like that sort of thing. So I think and that's what I mean. So I mean the protocols for use of the 8 ways of learning is that anybody can use it. That wants to. That's educating Aboriginal children and so forth. There's the custodians of the 8 ways of learning, which are they're down at Dubbo. And there's 8 ways online is their website and so forth.
Yeah.
And they've got a wiki sort of thing where you can see case studies and examples and so forth. But I do definitely think that you know anyone that does intend on using it, that they should go through training to make sure that they're using it properly, that they fully understand. But I think for you as an Aboriginal teacher that's teaching Aboriginal kids, these things just come naturally and organically to you. But I think there are other communities as well that have used the 8 ways of learning as a springboard to then adapt to their context, and that's also okay from the custodians of the 8 ways. So it'd be interesting for you to have a look at the 8 ways and see what you think.
I'm familiar with it. I just I guess in my experience of what I've noticed is that a lot of educators, like in early years when or even in school as well, to be honest, they kind of just seem to chuck it in there. Like let's tick this box, and it's not valuable when it's used in that way. So
not at all. And this is why I say people need who are listening and that are intending on using it, you need to have training, because we did training way back when with Dr. Tyson Porter, and I do share about the 8 ways of learning in part of the training that I do, and then refer on to 8 ways online and other providers, and Sally Lawrence, who's up in Queensland, who's done some stuff in the Koori Curriculum Club for us in our masterclasses. So we definitely teach and we talk about the 8 ways of learning. It's something that I'm really passionate about. But what I have seen is that educators that have sort of just Googled it and looked it up, what they'll do is they'll say, oh, nonverbal learning is kinesthetic learning. And so today we did collage with the children, so hashtag nonverbal learning. Or today we went outside and we did some gardening, so hashtag land links. And it doesn't work that way. That's not what it's about at all. Or they'll just put use the symbols when they read a book. They'll put the symbol for story sharing, or they'll put the symbol for story sharing in the book corner. That's not what the 8 ways of learning is about. So that's why I sort of think their training is needed. And look, we digress because we're not necessarily talking about pedagogies today, but I just wanted to also acknowledge that there are pedagogies. So Dr. Narita Blair, who is one of the speakers at our yarning circles, Belinda, and you'll be there, having a big yarn about cultural safety and so forth. But Dr. Narita Blair, she's based on the Central Coast. She does work out of Newcastle Uni. She's an academic. She's also I don't know what they call them. Like she's got a residency up here at NAIDOC, our Aboriginal dance college at Carryong and so forth. And so she has a pedagogical framework as well. Spider webs and liliology is what she refers to it as. So, she's really interesting. So I'll maybe after we do her session in our yarning circle, Belinda, we can get back on. We can do a pedagogy episode talking about what we've got from that. But so anyway, but look, all those things that you're saying in a primary school context, I think they're fantastic. And I think there's things that can be learnt there to also transfer into that early childhood context. So when I was teaching in an early learning service in the Inner West, we had a relationship with the primary school, which was directly across the road. And the Aboriginal students from there used to come over. Definitely during Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander significant dates and celebrations, they would come over. But then as part of our transition to school program,
absolutely,
when we would do our visits, we would meet those same children. So the Indigenous children at the school go to the library, they would read books, they were the buddies for our kids. And so it was just a really lovely program and way that they, were sort of lifted up to feel special. The other thing that we do to sort of celebrate our children's identities is from the very beginning, when somebody ticks that box in the enrolment form and says, yes, my child is Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander, we develop a cultural learning plan in collaboration with those families to actually understand what their child's cultural identity is and what it means to be Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander for them. So we know how to celebrate it. So what resonate, like what what does it mean to be Aboriginal to you and your family? What is it that they like to do? What are they proud of,
Yeah.
And so I think having an individual understanding of our kids and the fluidity of our identity is really important. So we take people through our cultural learning plans as part of our early years learning framework live webinar that we do. But do you also use cultural learning plans
Funny
at
that
your
you say
school?
that. Well, yes. So I, based upon what you're exactly saying, Jess, because what I've found is that, especially like in services, well, in school as well, it's literally a ticker box. Is your child Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander? Yes, no, both, neither,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
So, that kind of basically like puts us in a box, like we're one group of people when in fact we're over 250 different groups of people. So I
Correct.
developed this. Now, I don't know, I might have to unblur this for a second so I can show everybody. But I've developed a cultural profile, Jess, is what I've called it.
Yeah,
My
nice.
room's probably messy in the background. And it's called My Mob and Me. And so I got one of my in-laws, Gumbenga graphics to design this for me. And it's just got like, it's got stuff in here about, I'm from such and such nation. My language group is, my totems are, my mob commemorate and celebrate. In my family, we have special cultural beliefs such as my favorite activities to do with my mob and some of the cultural practices I maintain or I'm relearning with my family. Because I don't know about you, Jess. I might just replay that because I could just
You're
see
totally fine.
I had to make my bed today. Awkward. I, like with our own kids, I think I yarned about this, in one of our previous episodes, but like we still speak language. We speak my partner's language. I haven't grown up speaking language. Our community is learning, like relearning language now, but I haven't grown up with that. So my partner still speaks language. All his family does. And so we're still very, I guess, like connected with that. And I think with my son Yaru going to, when he was in his early years journey, really wanting them to have that understanding because he doesn't use, well, neither of our kids use like English words to go to the toilet, for instance. So, I wanted there to be some kind of place that they could like record that. Just, I guess, and for us, it's about, like I think especially like if you're understanding like children's totems and stuff, especially because you're having bush tucker lunch and you're serving up someone's totem, like that's a huge issue because
Yeah.
that's really against cultural protocols. But I've actually asked, I sit down and complete these with the children and the families at our schools, and I try and frame it in a really sensitive way because I also have an understanding that like because of colonization and disconnection and stolen generation, not everyone has the answers to all of those questions, and that's okay. That's part of our story, like our colonial history story. And the idea is kind of that as they continue to understand and continue to connect, that they might be able to fill in their own, like to continue after they've finished on our schooling journey. And I asked the children if they want to actually put this somewhere. Do they want the class to see it? Do they want to put it in our cultural area so that, everyone can see like, oh, we're from the same mob. We might be cousins, like, and generally most of the children are actually really proud and want their teacher to put it in their class on display so they can say, this is my mob and this is where I'm from.
I love that. And
Yeah.
so I think that's what you've also said is really key is that you just didn't give the flyer to the family, like not the flyer, the worksheet to the family, and then they go home and they're expected to do it themselves. It's like you tick the box and then what happens? So, it's not just it's just forgotten about or it's for funding or whatever it's for. It's like you then sit down, you have a conversation, you have a yarn, and like you can fill it in, you can ask questions. And I think probably what you're writing down is just summative dot points, but there's obviously a whole big yarn, and that's someone's first interaction with you and your opportunity to build that rapport and to show that you genuinely are interested in, who they are and where they're from and what they value and what they want for their child, and you want to be able to see their child as not just, another number that attends the school, but actually who they are. What do they like? What do their family like? What do they do on the weekends? You want to know. So I think that's so important. So if people want a copy of that, or to know more about the worksheet that you put
Yeah.
together, Belinda, like, is that a template that you provide? Is that a download that you offer, or how do you
Well,
feel?
look, I was thinking about doing that down the track, but to be honest, Jess, because freshwater education is really trying to be all around sustainability. So I've got them printed on 100% recycled paper. So they come in packs of 20. I think they're around $14.95. Maybe we'll do digital download later, but I can put the link in.
Yeah. We'll put the link in for people that want to be able to access it. I think that's great. Well done. Awesome. Love that. Okay. Where are we up to? We have these big yards and I'm like, I completely lose track of like we actually have to like hit these points, but it's so good. I know we should just like change this so it's like one action per episode.
100%.
Because
3 actions is way too.
I don't know why.
There's so
I don't know
much
why
you
I
could go
thought there
in.
was 3, because we can still keep talking about this. I mean, like other things that we've done for identity. For our Koori Curriculum Club members, we have an identity lesson plan. And in those, we sort of celebrate some books. So like Greg Dryce, I don't know if you know his books like
Yep.
Cuckoo Kookaburra and so forth. Well, he's got another one, My Culture and Me. So that's a great one for celebrating identity. Sally Morgan has her books like I Love Me, and another one, This Is Me. So they're really great books to sort of lift up that identity as well. But yeah, I guess it's when so it's just about knowing those children and having also complementary resources and ideas of how you can interweave that into your curriculum and into your program. So awesome.
I think there's like that initial conversation, Jess, is so important because that builds that beginning relationship with that family from the start. I had a yarn with a mum last week filling in one of these, but it was over the phone because I was in Newcastle. She was in Newcastle. But straight away from that first phone conversation, we have a family connection to that. And I'd never met her, never heard of her before, but have a family connection. So it's the information that can come from that, we're out in the garden, one of our kids is a Awabakal child. Look up, there's the totem, it's on the thing. I know that Birrabarn, the eagle hawk, is a Awabakal totem. Look here, like looking over the top of us while we're working here. There's so much incidental stuff, speaking, incorporating that child's language into greetings when you see them, thinking about, I guess, resources where that child's from, stories, books, songs. And really, it's all to do with that being culturally responsive, isn't it? Like, it's not just cultural identity. It's about, like, catering to the needs, like, that diverse need for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children.
True.
So I'm very passionate about that, Jess. Very passionate.
And that's why it's a good wrap action. You know what I mean? And like, this is why it's great. One. It's so good. So the next one that we had to talk about was reconciliation projects. And I think like the main types of projects that I've seen early childhood services do are things like having a collaborative art mural where they'll have an artist in residence for a period of time and involve children in creating an art piece, and reconciliation gardens. Those are the 2 main types that I sort of see in my work, and getting children involved in actually I went to this deadly school that was up in the mid-north coast, and it's a partnership between the preschool, the primary and the high school, and they've got this massive bush block and all the what do they call it? Woodwork? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
So, so the ones that were doing woodwork, they, as part of their course, they were making all the wooden ramps and pathways that take you through this like out on country so the preschoolers can walk. And then there were art pieces all throughout, and there were QR codes all throughout, but it was part of everything. Like, so you sort of see that's a project that's happened over time. It's not necessarily a reconciliation project, but it is, but it isn't. But that's I love the use of QR codes out on country that children have been involved in making, that they can share their stories of that place. So, their cultural stories, they sing cultural songs, they talk about significant sites, they talk about the different plants and so forth. And then other visitors that are coming through, or their peers that are coming through that don't know that, they're able to access that information as well.
Yeah.
I know you've talked about a few of the programs that you run, but are there any other particular reconciliation projects that you have at your school that you've come across?
So we developed, I love this because every year it shows the data and what's changing. So you know how Reconciliation Australia does like their reconciliation barometer?
Yes. Yep.
So they interview people from the community or everyday Australians about their, beliefs or thoughts about reconciliation, and it relates to the different concepts within I can't think off the top of my head what they are, Jess. Race relations,
Historical
integrity.
acceptance, equality and equity, unity, race relations. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's five,
So
isn't it? Yeah.
I had this idea of using those, like using their barometer and their data and adapting it to a child version to gauge how our school is progressing in reconciliation.
Yeah, nice.
So, yeah, so it's all the same questions, minus a couple of really heavy ones that aren't really age appropriate. And then I've just adapted it into child-friendly language. And we survey all students in the school from years 3, 4, 5, and 6 every year. And we also have begun surveying the parents and carers. Actually, I did do an article or a podcast or something with Narragansett Wally about this. So you should be able to access the ideas from that survey, because I'm obviously happy to share. Like, reconciliation is everyone's business. And so it's really interesting, Jess, when we did the initial one, because of all the foundations that we're laying at our school around building relationships with community and the role models that we have coming into our school, like on a constant basis, you could see that the difference between the regular everyday community and our school was something like, say, 39% of the community said they trust Aboriginal people, but our school had like 97% trusted Aboriginal people. So it was like a stark difference. And every year we're compiling, and we'll present that at our Reconciliation Week Assembly. So we'll have to start planning that again soon. It's just so powerful to see, like, in action, like all the hard work that we're trying to do behind the scenes to make this happen. And you can visually see, like,
how the social impact. Yes.
It's massive. Yeah. So that would probably be our main thing that we work on every year.
That's so great. I love that.
Yeah.
The next mandatory action not mandatory action, that reconciliation action plan action that we were talking about is reconciliation networks. And this network idea, I guess, is that it's about how you can not just have your working group, but also think about who in your community and is also passionate about reconciliation and how you can come together and support one another and collaborate. So Narragansett has this tool where you can actually search who has a RAP in your area and reach out to those people. So I really think, like, as you said before, reconciliation is everybody's business. And so I feel like this is the one space that people aren't necessarily trying to keep their resources and their information and their relationships to themselves. I kind of feel like if you know something that's going to progress reconciliation, then share it, empower other people, motivate, inspire other people, mentor other people, and bring them along on that journey with you. And what your school or early learning service does, another school or early learning service may not do, and vice versa. Like, you can support one another and whatnot. So I was actually at an USH on the northern beaches last week, and this particular USH service, they had got a lump of funding and they had us out to do some PD, and they're working with us. And instead of them just saying, well, this is just for us, they invited all the USH services in their local area to come and participate in that. She also bought a heap of resources and said to people, yep, look, I've bought extra resources for you and your services as well. Take them with you.
That's amazing.
So, and that was part of her funding as well, that she put in her application, that whatever she received, she saw it as it was her responsibility to then be able to share that with others and to continue to be that influence of change in her community. And so each of these services will all end up having their reconciliation action plans, and they're all their own businesses. They're all different providers. They're not the same organization or anything like that. But what they'll do is they'll come together regularly and they'll have maybe 3 actions like what we're talking about here that would be on the agenda, and say, well, what are you doing at your service? And that works well for us, or this is what we do, and share ideas and have that kind of information exchange. So I think that's really powerful, not to protect knowledge and resources, but to share what you know. And I've written, my business is too small to have a reconciliation action plan. Like, I have like 2 employees, one's my mum and one's my husband. So it's not really, to have one of those RISE wraps. But what I do have is a reconciliation commitment statement. And in one of my commitments to reconciliation is to share what I know with others and to educate those within my sphere of influence. And I think that's so important. Education is the strongest form of advocacy that there is, and to be that catalyst for change for people in your community. So what they also suggest is that you could have sub-network meetings. So and I think this is particularly useful if you have, you're a big school or early learning service, is that you might have an educator at your service that's responsible for planning and researching Reconciliation Week activities. So connecting that particular person up with other educators that are specifically also responsible for that action.
In their services.
Yes. So then those people are regularly meeting and they've got their own network happening. I think that's another idea. So you have like you have a network, and then you have some subgroups that shoot off from there. I think you can also be thinking of working online, and I really like that, having that idea of like that local knowledge, but then talking to people that are in different service types from yours, in different types of providers and so forth, to get exposure to other ideas. So one of the things that we do in our programming, planning and pedagogy sessions on Zoom, we put educators randomly into breakout sessions. And we did one last week, and I joined one of the breakout rooms, and there were educators all from different states. We had like 2 family daycares. We had a NUSH, we had a primary and an early childhood person, who were all yarning about what they had been doing so far. And I said, it'd be great for you to be able to keep this conversation happening, and have a little Facebook group or a WhatsApp group where you can continue to share ideas on what it is that you're doing and inspire one another, because they were like going, oh, like, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And I think there's nothing more empowering for educators than hearing the stories and the journeys of other educators that have been there, done that, that have the same challenges, that have found great solutions. So really sharing those resources and insights, I think, is important. And making sure that, potentially, like, if you have events that are happening at your school, that you're inviting those people to come and visit you and to take part. And I think we talked about this with relationships with community, how you would consistently continue to reach out and invite people to come back, and to be a part of your journey and to be a part of your community.
Absolutely. I think just a note on that. One thing I have picked up from some services is that they will be involved in like a RAP network externally from their service, like what you're mentioning, but then they don't have a working party established within the service. What are your thoughts about that? So no working party, it's one person in the service doing the RAP actions, and then they're involved in a wider group, like what you're mentioning, a reconciliation network.
I don't understand the theory as to why they would not have a RAP working group. And I think we sort of talked about this in our first episode where we were talking about the different ways of using that RAP working group. You were sort of suggesting that maybe it was just a few key educators and some community people and families, whereas I was sort of suggesting, everybody should be in the RAP working group. Because you're not in the RAP working group, you can't be assigned an action, right? So I think that's also partially my thinking in that. I think that everybody should be in the RAP working group, and everyone, if they're not in the RAP working group, I assume they're also not able to access their reconciliation action plan.
No, because you have to be in the network to be able to access the platform.
So they're also not getting access to all of those resources, all of that professional learning, all of those ideas for action. So even, like, there might be somebody that's leading, activities for Reconciliation Week, but there's also another action that's about teaching about reconciliation. I would hope that everybody teaches about reconciliation, not just between the 27th of May and the 3rd of June, those are things that should happen all the time. And there's heaps of great resources. So it's a disservice to not have them in the group, because you're limiting access to that. But
I think that's an important point to note, like that the RAP working party is still an essential part of that, additional to the RAP network. It has to be that core fundamental part, needs to be the RAP working party within the service.
Yeah. What I know a preschool that's close to me up here does, they have like little think tank lunchtime sessions. So they've got 3 rooms at the service. they might have 3 educators, 1 in each room, that are responsible for overseeing acknowledgement of country and reflecting and reviewing. They don't have to do all the work, but they're overseeing it. They're managing it. Then they might have another 3 educators that are responsible for caring for country and maintaining the bush tucker stuff that's happening outdoors and so forth.
Yeah.
So periodically, I don't know what the schedule is, but I think it's about once a month, all the acknowledgement of country educators will come together during their programming time to talk about what's happening and any ideas and so forth. And they'll also talk about, then the other 3 will come together and they'll talk about things that they've been doing in the garden, caring for country, and have those exchanges and ideas to get people collaborating across the different rooms. And I find that works well, like even internally. So I guess it's one of those things as well, like just because you are managing the RAP action, that you're overseeing it, you don't actually have to do all the work.
Yeah.
And I think it's about people's leadership styles as well, and their understanding of what the RAP's purpose is, and that it is a tool. To me, it's a tool to bring about cultural change.
Yeah.
It won't bring about cultural change if only one person is doing it.
Yes.
What it will do is build that one person's cultural capacity, awareness, and responsiveness, but it won't have the same desired effect of everybody else. And it's not a race. And RAPs are not about reporting on what you have done, because people often say to me, we're not far enough ahead yet to have a reconciliation action plan. Like, what are you talking about? That's why you have a RAP. It's your roadmap. It's your roadmap. It tells you, it identifies, this is what you're doing really well. This is what you need to work on.
Yeah.
So it tells you why, it tells you what, and then it gives you ideas on the how. So it's not just saying, you're not doing an acknowledgement of country, you really should be doing that. It's like, I know, but how? It tells you how. There's so much there.
So much info. Yeah.
So I think it's a misunderstanding at some point along the way on somebody's journey as to what the purpose of a RAP is, and how to use it effectively.
Yeah. You can start from scratch, like from day one in your service that you've just started to do a RAP.
Yeah. I mean, and you keep your evidence elsewhere. So we can do another episode on evidence and things that have worked well for other services. But one of my favorite things to do, it's very simple, is you just use a PowerPoint, and then you have, as the heading on your PowerPoint, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the classroom. And then whenever something happens with community visits or whatever, you update that. You update your PowerPoint and so forth, and that becomes your evidence. Or it's not your evidence, but it shows the story of what you've done. It shows your journey. It goes there like a little projects book that happens. And usually services will have something like a Dropbox or a shared drive. So it sits there and everyone can access the same document and update it.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. I've heard people that use, programming software like, what's it called? Story Park and something or other else. I can't even remember now. Kinderloop, Story Park and Kinderloop. They add a child, like a fake child, into their center, which is called Narragarawali or something. And they assign everything. That's right. They assigned everything that they do with their reconciliation action plan to Narragarawali. And then it's all there underneath that the fake child's profile. I don't know if like people that make these apps, if they listen to this, I shouldn't be saying that, probably I shouldn't say that. But I think it's a good idea to collect the information, because people do a lot of things all the time. Whatever works.
I think that's the thing with this stuff, Jess, is like whatever works. Like there's no one way. Like whatever's working.
That's right. And I think that's the beauty. And like I'm so passionate about trying to get educators to share their practice and share their stories. So if I'm on Facebook, or you're in one of my Facebook groups or whatever, and I see that you put up a great post or something that you're doing, or whatever, I'm like, why don't you write an article for me? Why don't you come on my podcast? Why don't you come and do a little presentation or whatever? Because I think like people look at me, I haven't been in the classroom in a really long time, And I really think it's about lifting people's professional identities up and just saying, actually, what like as a profession, collectively, we've got some really great ideas. Educators have, and there's so many different ways to do it. And if people only ever listen to me, they're only ever going to know what I do, But, that's, part of our collaboration as well, is that there are different ways of doing this, and and it's about multiple voices. So if you 100%. Have an engaging program or activity or a project that you've done at your service and you're listening to this podcast, speak up, like send us an email, tell us what you've done. We'll have you on as a guest and you share. I think that's what this is about. That's why we're here talking. We want to share.
We'd love to feature your stories because, like at the end of the day, this is about working for our kids. Before anything else, for me, that is what this is about. Like it's about building a better future for our children, like our Aboriginal children as parents, Jess, you're a mum too. This is the future of our kids. So whatever we can do to support and, share each other, in each other's journeys and help, spread that awareness and, it's going to make massive change for our kids.
Yeah, so true.
Let's share it.
Exactly. Let's leave it at that because I think we've packed an elephant into a jam jar into this session. I feel like that we've set the tone. We have to keep doing 3, but anyway, we'll have to have a look and see what 3 we're going to do next. That's right. If you have a wrap action that you want us to do an episode on, then reach out. If you have something that you want to share, a great program or initiative or a success or tell us. We want to celebrate you. And on the other side of it, if you've got a challenge, if you've got questions that you want us to address and you want some tips and tricks from us, let us know. Reach out. We don't bite. Cool. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Belinda.
Stay deadly. Bye.
Bye.